Okay, let's start with a kind of weird question. What if your living room wasn't actually in your house? What if your kitchen was a short walk down the street? It sounds a little strange, right? But in one really unique neighborhood, this very idea is completely changing what it means to be home.
Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into a place in Seoul, South Korea called Hwamdong. And trust me, it's a neighborhood that's experimenting with a fascinating and maybe even revolutionary model for community and living.
So, picture this. You're just 15 minutes away from the massive, bustling Seoul station, but you find yourself in these charming, winding alleys. It's a place with what locals call a people-living smell. You know, that cozy, lived-in vibe. But if you look a little closer, you start spotting some odd things. Spaces that look exactly like private living rooms and kitchens, but they're open for anyone to use. So what on earth is going on here?
To really get what makes this place tick, to understand this whole idea of shared rooms, you've got to understand the unique fabric of the neighborhood itself.
Think about the contrast for a second. You've got these modern new towns, right? They're planned all at once, usually for a pretty similar demographic. They can feel, well, a bit sterile. But Hwamdong, it's the complete opposite. It's organic. It's this incredible mosaic of history, with old and new buildings standing side by side, housing everyone from retirees to young professionals. And what that means is the neighborhood is always alive, filled with this constant, gentle hum of daily life.
So how did a unique experiment like this even get started? Well, it all began with one person who had a very, very different idea of what it means to be an architect.
The man behind it all is Lee Jun-hyung, and after spending years at a big corporate architecture firm, he had this realization. He didn't want to design flashy, famous landmarks for a handful of wealthy clients. Nope. His dream was something much more, well, down to earth.
Yeah, his path was pretty unconventional. In 2014, he just up and left that corporate track to start his own studio. A couple of years later, he literally stumbled upon Hwamdong by chance and decided to set up his office there. And that's when he started asking himself this really critical question. As an architect, what could he actually give to this community he was now a part of?
And this quote right here, it just gets to the absolute heart of it. He thought, you meet doctors and lawyers in your daily life, but when does an ordinary person ever meet an architect? He wanted to be that guy, a real, accessible part of the neighborhood's daily life.
This desire to be a neighborhood architect led him to a truly groundbreaking idea. One that would really start to redefine the very boundaries of what a home is.
Now, Lee was really fascinated by alternative housing, but the idea of a 30-year commitment to a brand new building, that just felt huge, totally daunting. So he had to think smaller, way more creatively, which brought him to this question. If building new houses is just too big of a project, what's the alternative? And this was his light bulb moment. Think about it. What if your own apartment is way too small for a dinner party? But there's a beautiful shared kitchen right down the street. You don't have a big screen for a movie night? What if there was a comfy, communal living room for that? He basically imagined a neighborhood that could act as a giant extension of your own home.
So he started really small. In 2017, he rented this tiny little space and created the very first Hwam kitchen. And his goal was incredibly modest. Just make enough money to pay the rent. That's it. But his timing was perfect. Cooking shows were huge, and young people without big fancy kitchens were dying for a place to experiment. It was an instant, massive success.
Riding that amazing wave of success, the project, which he called Hwamyonlib, just exploded. From that one little kitchen, an entire collection of shared spaces grew. A quiet study for focused work, a living room with a huge screen, a bakery, even a private annex with a bathtub for total relaxation. All of them scattered throughout the neighborhood, all connected by a central cafe that acts as the hub.
But what makes these spaces work so incredibly well isn't just the idea. It's the philosophy behind their design. And honestly, it's a direct rejection of a major trend we see everywhere today. Lee's philosophy is so simple. Create spaces for living, not just for Instagram. While so much modern design is chasing that perfect, sterile photo, his #1 priority is the user's experience. He believes the space shouldn't be a distraction. It should just be a comfortable, functional backdrop for whatever you're doing. It's why the kitchen has open shelves. Sure, maybe it's not as tidy for a photo shoot, but it's perfect for actually finding what you need when you're cooking.
And his commitment to the neighborhood's reality, it goes even deeper than that. Years before he even opened the kitchen, he started this pro bono project called Hwamgarok, which means recording the house. He creates these incredibly detailed architectural drawings of old homes, completely for free, just to preserve their legacy.
And as he puts it, this project is like writing a biography for Hwamdong itself. It gives families a totally new way to talk about their own homes.
He even asked them to give their house a name, which forces them to really stop and think about what their home truly means to them. It's beautiful.
So when you start to put all of this together, the shared rooms, the design philosophy, the historical preservation, you realize this whole thing is about so much more than just a clever business model. It's about fundamentally redefining what a home can even be.
Okay, so the big question, does it work as a business? And the answer is yes. The shared spaces bring in about 12 million won. That's roughly $9,000 every single month. So yeah, it's a sustainable model. But that number, it's not the real goal here, not even close.
Lee calls this a meaning business. He says if money were the only goal, he would have opened up branches in other, much more profitable districts by now. But instead, he's focused entirely on his role right there, within Hwamdong. In fact, the rental business only makes up about 30% of his firm's income. The rest? It comes from traditional architecture projects, many of which are now for his own neighbors.
So where's the true value in all of this? Well, according to Lee, you're not going to find it on a balance sheet. You find it in the guest books. He says they are just filled with these incredibly personal stories and heartfelt confessions, things you just can't put a price on.
He tells this one story about a husband who booked the private bath for his wife, who had just given birth. He did it simply so she could have a few hours all to herself and just completely let go. You know? A home is supposed to be that place of total rest, but with all the pressures of family and life, sometimes it isn't. And that's when these neighborhood rooms become this vital alternative, a place to finally find that peace. And that really brings us to our final question. This whole experiment in Hwamdong challenges us to think way beyond just four walls. It suggests that maybe a home isn't just a single building. Maybe it's a feeling of belonging, of comfort and community that can actually extend out into our entire neighborhood. So it makes you wonder, what do you think really makes a house a home?